the opening tip.
Pretty big piece of news yesterday, Jack. I don't know if you heard this or saw this, but the College Football Playoff Committee made it official. They put out a release yesterday about lunch hour that they will, in fact, be making changes to the way the 13-person committee evaluates teams during and then at the end of the 2025 college football season.
Yeah.
The release, this is something the SEC has pushed for, right? They want strength of schedule to mean more, not just wins, losses. In the release, the College Football Playoff Committee announced yesterday that, yes, they are making changes. Here's the quote: enhancements to the tools that the selection committee uses to assess schedule strength and how teams perform against their schedules. Okay? Does that make sense? So strength of schedule is going to mean more, heavily weighted. Changes obviously come from the controversy of last year's first installment of the 12-team tournament when, if you remember, SMU jumped into the 12-team playoff after a loss to Clemson in the ACC championship game, pushed them ahead of a 10-2 Miami team that did not reach that ACC conference title game, and a 9-3 Alabama team who did not play on championship Saturday. They were idle, just like Miami. And so going into the weekend, Alabama was in. Coming out of the weekend, Alabama was out, and SMU was in with a loss, which confused everybody. But on this show, if you were listening, we told you that would probably happen because the data point that gave SMU played in it.
Yeah.
At least they reached their conference championship game and gave Clemson a hell of a ball game that was won on a 57-yard walk-off field goal. Alabama did not play in a championship game. Texas and Georgia were playing that day in that game for the SEC championship. So, but according to the CFP yesterday, the current schedule strength metric has been adjusted to apply greater weight to games against strong opponents. An additional metric, record strength, has been added to the selection committee's analysis to go beyond a team's schedule strengths to assess how teams performed against that schedule. Okay? The metric rewards teams defeating high-quality opponents while minimizing the penalty for losing to such teams. Right? So if you beat a high-quality opponent, that's weighted heavier, and it's less penalizing to lose to a high-quality team. Okay? That sounds a lot like the NCAA basketball quad system, right? Yeah. NCAA basketball for the men's and women's tournament, they do the quads. Quad 1 wins, quad 2 wins, quad 1 losses, quad 2 losses, all the way down to 4.
And it's weighted based on home, road, neutral, and stuff like that.
Now, based on that paragraph, there's no way to determine how the playoff committee would have changed the way it ranked anybody last year. But let's consider that according to yesterday's change, at the end of the season, the committee will take into account that, let's go last year, Indiana, who was in the playoff last year with an 11-1 record, but their wins came against teams who had a median SP Plus ranking of 92. 92nd. There's 136 teams. The 11 teams that Indiana beat last year combined to rank 92nd. So near triple digits. They didn't beat anybody good. They lost to Ohio State, so that would be a minimal penalization, but they didn't beat anybody. SMU was in with wins, 11 wins over teams that were 58th in that same metric. Alabama was out with 3 losses, but they had their 9 wins were against teams median ranked 33rd. And their wins also included wins over Missouri, Georgia, who was number 1 at the time, at LSU at night. Those wins. But again, this is why we'll never know how this would have shaken out, because back to the losses, they lost to 2 6-6 teams. Right? They lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, both on the road. Now, again, would Alabama be in this year based on last year? Possibly. SMU be out? I don't know. But they did announce the change. Now, Miami, who also crowed from South Beach about their 10-2 mark getting leapfrogged. Remember, they're the only best teams they beat last year with Cam Ward, the runner-up to the Heisman Trophy, were Georgia Tech, a 7-5 team, and Syracuse, who knocked them out. On the road, they had to go to Syracuse, and Kyle McCord and Fran Brown. And by the way, Fran Brown, the head coach of Syracuse, has been popping off about that win all off season. That's a cocky coach. I like him a lot. I actually like Fran Brown at Syracuse more than I like Kurt Cignetti, the very opinionated coach of Indiana, at least just on an outside appearance. 9-3 Syracuse team beat them, and that knocked them out. If they had won that ball game, we know Miami's defense was terrible. They were not championship caliber. Alabama was a championship caliber team last year. If you can go on the road and not just beat LSU and Baton Rouge, but thump, they were done by the third quarter in that game. End of the third quarter. Nobody beats LSU and Baton Rouge at night. Well, they didn't just beat them. They crushed them. And they beat Georgia. And they beat Missouri. But, they went on the road and lost and weren't ready to play against Alabama and Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt turned out to be a pretty good team. And that Oklahoma loss was in the second to the last game of the regular season. So maybe, because remember, that's after Oklahoma had fired their offensive coordinator. They maybe started to figure out some things. That was just a bad night. And Kalen DeBoer found out in year one that you got to get your team up every week. You can't, even if the record says they're a 500 team, and you're really talented, you can't just roll the ball out. And I think at times last year, Alabama, especially on defense, did that. And against Oklahoma, they just got overwhelmed at home or on the road at night at Oklahoma, which is a tough place to play. Vanderbilt, that one came after they had beaten Georgia in that classic, game. And then, they didn't get back up the next week, and Diego Pavia and company beat them after jumping out to an early lead. So, I don't know how this is going to change. But that's what it says. For folks who just didn't hear it, the current schedule metric has been adjusted to apply greater weight to games against strong opponents. An additional metric, record strength, has been added to the selection committee's analysis. So there's now a new tool that they have that will go beyond a team's schedule strength and assess how a team performed against that schedule. So rewarding teams for defeating quality opponents, minimizing the penalty of losing it to a quality opponent. The changes will provide minimal reward for defeating crappy teams, essentially. We're not going to credit you for beating a team you should beat, while imposing great penalties for losing to such a team. So, again, back to the Alabama point, in this metric, they would have been credited with the huge win, but they would have still taken some points away for losing to 500 teams.
Two very bad losses, yeah.
But Alabama would bounce back and say, wait, but they were on the road, they were at night. That's a little bit of a different metric, because you said in the NCAA quad system, they do take into account road games, because college basketball plays a lot of neutral site games, like these early tournaments. And, Texas is going to play Duke this year to start the year with Sean Miller, his first game in Charlotte. So they do a lot of that in college basketball. So they take that into account. Was this a true road environment versus a neutral environment? And that's how because people talk about, we got to get rid of this committee. And what other sport uses committees? Well, every other sport in college athletics uses a committee to seed their tournament.
There's just a lot more.
They all do.
Yeah.
The 64 teams or 68 teams is chosen by a committee who use the tools of the metrics and the computers and the data to fill out the bracket. And that's what the 13 people in the committee do, because everybody just throws hey, man, get rid of this damn committee. We don't need people. Well, that's how the college sports does it. The baseball tournament, when you seed the 64 teams and try to get to Omaha, that's all. There's a committee that gathers and builds that bracket. And now college football didn't need a committee for a while, but now it has a bracket though.
Yeah.
So you gotta only pick the 12 teams. You got to seed the bracket. And now this year, remember, as the changes are coming, there is no longer. It's a straight seeding model. This year there will not be automatic top fours. Notre Dame could be the number 1 seed this year, which last year they couldn't be any higher than 5. Boise State was the 3 seed because they were a conference champion, which automatically got them into the top 5. So was Arizona State. That will not be the case this year. It's 1 to 12. Once the 12 are in, they're going to seed it 1 to 12.
Yeah, and I think that's a little better. But this strength of record thing that we can just. It's simply the SEC lobbying to get another team in, whether or not. And you either.
But I don't think they're wrong.
Yeah, you can either.
I
think
would
that's
rather
good or bad.
reward great tough losses on the road against a good team. Reward for playing, especially non-conference. That should be weighted too. This whole Kurt Signetti thing in Indiana, where they won't play anybody in non-conference, they're actually canceling games in the non-con. Look, give Texas credit for going on the road to play Ohio State. Notre Dame's going to Miami. A&M's going up to play Notre Dame. You don't have to do that. Those are voluntary games that are not mandatory. Your conference games are mandatory. So give them credit for that. Even if you go on the road and lose, at least they did it. And again, I think at the end of the year, you should be rewarded for trying to play a tough schedule. It's better for TV. It's better for consumers. I think it's better for your football team to be tested early. And certainly you should also penalize teams that won't play those games.
Yeah.
Play cupcakes for September.
I would just rather have a Big Ten SEC tournament at this point than do this charade of, our strength of record, even though we were 4th place in our own conference, actually says that we're better than this team that lost a conference title game. But I will
say, you're right, because there's no perfect way to skin this cat.
Yeah, no, I mean...
but the Big 12 still is included, and they need to start... I'll say this for the Big 12 this year and beyond. They need to start scheduling some tougher out-of-conference, non-conference games in the early part of the season and win them. Mm-hmm. And like that Baylor game with Auburn this year...
Huge.
a week from tomorrow is huge.
I think Baylor's going to win that game.
Well, they need to.
They do.
Any game where the Big 12 gets to play a Big 10 team or an ACC team or a SEC team for sure, they got to take the opportunity. Because you know how once they get to the conference, Texas knew this for a while, once you get into Big 12 play, it's just cannibalizing, right? You're beating each other. It's going to lower your strength of schedule. They need to schedule those games, and they need to win those games. And they're early. And Baylor have all off season with Dave Aranda to get ready for an Auburn team with a new quarterback. You're at home. It's going to be a night game. You got to win that game. That will help boost the Big 12 big picture because a rising tide lifts all boats. A Big 12 team beats a couple of SEC teams head-to-head, not in bowl games at the end of the year last year, which don't count. Now, this month, first month of the year, you got to win some of those ball games, and you'll get more credit at the end, in my opinion. And that's why you should be playing those games, because they don't knock you. Because, again, even though they're going straight seeding, winning your conference still gets you in automatically. You're automatically in. That's why we heard Greg McElroy say yesterday he's got 37 teams that can make the 12-team playoff because he thinks 9 teams in the Big 12 could actually win the conference. And that's the way it works. And that's why you can still, as a coach and a program, feel good about scheduling those games, because if you lose it, okay, all right, we learned a lot about our team. Let's get better. We can still win the Big 12.
Yeah, it's like a quad 1 loss is better than a quad 3
but that's very
win,
commonplace. I mean, Sean Miller at Texas basketball, they want to play those games.
Yeah, they're playing Duke.
Yeah, I need to know where I'm at here. I don't need to be mopping it up against Kent State.